The history of Methodism in Shepherdstown can be traced to 1778 when circuit rider Reverend Edward Bailey supported the town in a circuit that stretched from the Potomac westward to beyond the Ohio River. Circuit riders were critical to the growth of Methodism in America. Currently located on the corner of Church and New Streets, New Street United Methodist Church has served the community of Shepherdstown, West Virginia, for well over 150 years. Built in 1854, the brick sanctuary replaced the original log church that was destroyed by fire earlier that year. As a witness to the Civil War, the building served as a hospital for the wounding after the Battle of Antietam in 1862, for records show that most public buildings and homes in the town sheltered wounded Confederate soldiers after Robert E. Lee's troops retreated back across the Potomac River just outside Shepherdstown into Virginia. At the end of the war, the Methodist Episcopal Church in Shepherdstown separated, and New Street continued to serve the congregation of the Northern faction, while the Southern supporters constructed a new building on German Street, now the War Memorial Building. Reuniting in the 1940s, the congregation selected New Street as their home, and following extensive remodeling and construction, this building has continued to house the Methodist congregation and serve as an important part of the community in Shepherdstown. Now, some additional details of interest to historians that will include a description of notable historic events in the life of this historic church in Shepherdstown. This will serve as a timeline for these events as well as point out some of the people involved with the church and some of the artifacts from church history that are now in the church history archives.
The beginnings of the Methodist faith in Shepherdstown trace back in time to 1776, when an itinerant Methodist preacher, Freeborn Garrison, visited the town of Mecklenburg on the Potomac River and preached to the faithful at random gatherings from time to time, as he traveled around the territory during the time of the Revolutionary War. The name of the town was later changed to Shepherdstown in honor of the town and settlement founder Thomas Shepherd, who built the Shepherd Mill on the banks of the Town Run stream as it flows into the nearby Potomac River. That mill structure, and the large water wheel that operated the millworks, are still there today. They were built to last. Thomas Shepherd established the town settlement of mostly German immigrants, and laid out the streets with the names we know today, all back in historic times of the mid-1700s. That includes New Street and German Street, where both of our Methodist historic church buildings were to be constructed. The first Methodist congregation organized gathering for worship is documented as 1778. With only circuit rider preachers leading worship in various locations around the town. Methodist Bishop Francis Asbury, of some fame in history, visited the town of Mecklenburg several times between 1782 and 1794, some 12 years in span, and preaching to a large crowd of town worshippers, said to be 1,500 in the crowd. That event is recorded as 1789. Following a long period of growth and transitioning the 18th and 19th century calendar, the church in Shepherdstown was designated a center church in 1820. During the previous growth and transition period, the town name was changed from Mecklenburg to Shepherdstown. In 1840, the Shepherdstown Methodist Church was designated as a station church in the church circuit that included Methodist churches Mount Wesley in Scrabble, Marvin Chapel in Rocky Marsh, Bethesda Church at Muller's Crossroads and U Village Church in Unionville. In 1841, the Shepherdstown Methodists constructed a log church building on Church Street. The congregation had grown to substantial size, and they were financially able to purchase a town lot and build a permanent church located on Church Street, between West Washington Street, to the south, and West New Street, to the north. This location was adjacent to Union Alley, and entrance facing onto Church Street. The Shepherdstown congregation worshipped at this location for about 12 years, until it was destroyed by fire in 1853. The house directly across Church Street from the log church, was the Bradshaw House in 1853, and that house caught fire on a windy March day. The Bradshaw House front entrance faces on West Washington Street, at the corner of the Church Street intersection. During the fire, townspeople gathered and formed a bucket brigade, down Washington Street, to the town run beyond South King Street, to bring water to the scene and help fight the large house fire. Wind-blown burning embers from the Bradshaw House fire crossed Church Street and set the Methodist log church building on fire with complete destruction in a wind-blown fire, and with minimal firefighting capabilities in the small town in those days. The Shepherdstown Methodists needed a new church building, following the catastrophic fire on Church Street. In 1854, the church trustees bought the lot directly across Union Alley from the old log church that burned, and built a new brick church building, larger than the log church, and front entrance on New Street at the corner intersection with Church Street. The cornerstone dedicated in 1854, marks the sanctuary structure of our New Street United Methodist Church today. In 1854, it marked the dedication of the Methodist Episcopal Church, also known as the M.E. Church of Shepherdstown. During the Civil War, the M.E. Church of Shepherdstown was used as a hospital-like facility, to attend to the needs of many wounded soldiers, following the Battle of Antietam on September 17, 1862. During the hours, and days, following the battle at Sharpsburg, wounded Confederates crossed the Potomac River in various disorganized ways and came struggling into Shepherdstown. Desperately seeking aid, food and shelter, these soldiers filled the streets, homes, churches, buildings, and vacant lots, in town with the wounded and mortally wounded, numbering in the thousands. The wounded were everywhere, all over town, and they were cared for by the townspeople for weeks. In the fall of 1862, many died of their wounds, while being cared for, and attended by the town's residents, and these soldiers were buried by town volunteers, at Elmwood Cemetery. There are 114 Confederate graves, in a section of the cemetery, dedicated and memorialized for those who fought at the Battle of Antietam. Following the divisive Civil War, North and South factions and Loyalists were very much divided along religious lines, as well as political lines. In 1866, Methodist church leadership decided to split the Methodist church congregations into two factions, for future worship and management of church affairs. Shepherdstown Methodists were divided in many ways, and formed the M.E. Church South, and M.E. Church North. In 1868, the M.E. Church South congregation built their own new church building on German Street, at the corner of King Street. The M.E. Church South worshipped at this location for 70 years. The M.E. Church North congregation continued to worship at the New Street building, until reunification of the church in 1940. The two churches were reunited at that time, and resumed church activities together, sharing the German Street building and the New Street building for church activities, and later uniting at the New Street Methodist Church. The M.E. Church South building, on German Street, later became the War Memorial Building, and is now the Shepherdstown Community Center. Methodist church leadership negotiated a reunification plan for all Methodist churches in 1939, and approved a formal plan to restructure the church operations in 1940. The plan was soon implemented, and so began a period of significant adjustment and change for church operations and activities. In 1947, the New Street Church building began a 7-year transition period, with a major remodeling and addition of a new office and Sunday school area, new church entrance area, and a fellowship auditorium that was added to the original 1854 sanctuary building. The new building additions were dedicated in 1954, and the church became known officially as the New Street Methodist Church. There were some additional changes to the building during the year of 1959, as the church basement areas were modified by hand digging, and below-grade construction was added to expand for today's Boy Scout troop area, kitchen area, and dining hall area. The formal name of the church was changed to New Street United Methodist Church, in 1969. This will serve as a tour of church history artifacts. Artifacts that remain from church history include furniture items, pastoral clothing, collection plates from the M.E. Church South, ceremonial items from M.E. Church South, Bibles dating back to the mid-1800s, Sunday school registers, financial registers, pastors' notebooks, hymnals, and Sunday school teaching guides. There are Bible study materials from the 19th and 20th century church activities. There is perhaps the most significant and interesting artifact, a tin box that was removed from behind the cornerstone of the M.E. Church South on German Street, containing a Methodist church leader's guidebook which lays out the formal details of the thinking, guidelines and attitudes of the church body at the time of the Civil War. This simple tin box time capsule from 1868, also contained personal items, and letters donated by those who attended the laying of the cornerstone ceremony on German Street in 1868. There are dedication and memorial plaques affixed around the historic New Street Church building, on windows and near entrances, that commemorate some of the church members and families from the past 166 years of New Street Church history. Final notes, sources and credits. Today, the New Street United Methodist Church continues to serve the community of Shepherdstown as a center for worship, fellowship and outreach for those of the Christian faith. The church is particularly suited to those who live nearby and enjoy opportunities to volunteer in service to the community. New Street Church has established a local reputation for food fellowship with the community, through church family volunteers working as a team, to present well-attended pancake breakfast, spaghetti dinner, ice cream social, and baked goods social events for the community throughout the spring and summer months. At other times the church volunteers are host to the Spring Fling Yard Sale, the Ladies' Tea Party event and other events of benefit to the community. The church hosts Boy Scout Troop 33 with a dedicated special event room, for meetings and storage of equipment, since 1969. Sources: History of Methodism in Shepherdstown, document, Cave and Athey. New Street Methodist Church History, document, Perks, White, and Kane. Shepherdstown One Vast Confederate Hospital, book, Kevin Pollock. New Street Church Archives, Hope Room, Margaret Rose Smith. Pictures: Ron Keppel, Jim Kane, Margaret Rose Smith, Doug Perks. Narration: written by J.V. Kane and narrated by software-synthesized speech. The historic New Street Methodist Church video is produced by JVC Productions of Shepherdstown, West Virginia, April 2020. YouTube at Bits of History JVC.